and welcome to another episode of DIOTALK. I'm Dio. Let's talk. My guest of the evening is a talented individual. He's an author. He's a podcast host. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Paul Honeycutt. Welcome to the show, man. How are you?
Hey, Dio, thanks. I'm doing really well. A little rush, in that adult life. Like you think you got everything scheduled out and then you hit traffic. But I'm here and I really am looking forward to being on and having a conversation with you.
Great. It's great, man. I totally understand. I'm the same boat as you. So no worries here, man. There's a lot of questions I want to ask you, right? Because you have an amazing, interesting journey of a life from, this amazing book you have, from your podcast, from, being raised in a cult.
Yeah.
So, so I'll guess, my first question is, what was that like growing up in a cult for you? Like, I've never had the opportunity to meet somebody with such experience as yourself.
Sure. I mean, it's interesting. A lot of people ask that what it was like. And, when you're a kid and you're growing up in a culture of whatever it is,
you don't realize
you don't realize that. You kind of know, but
there you go.
it's so you sort of are like, okay, well, this is how the world looks and this is how things are supposed to be done. What makes it very different, I think, that maybe anybody can kind of understand this if you feel like you are not in the normative society, is, when I went to school, like, we didn't celebrate holidays. You didn't salute the flag. We didn't have friends that were not Jehovah's Witnesses. So you only hang out with Jehovah's Witnesses. So you're kind of like the weird kid right away. And you're having to learn to take a stance and stand up for beliefs that, quite frankly, at 5, even 10, and as a teenager, you're not, it's hard to kind of wrap your head around why it is what it is. Your parents are telling you this is what you hear culturally, this is what everything is being kind of indoctrinated and programmed into you. So you're like, okay, well, I guess this is how the world works, but it's super weird. So it's just really it was really different, man, to like have to take those stances and to feel like not part of all the other kids, not to understand the holidays, but also have this perspective that like we were better in ways because like we knew God better, type of things. So you're like, oh, you're evil, but we're okay, even though we're not okay too. We're all sinners. So like there was this heavy amount of like negative energy that was always felt surrounded. So you just, as a kid, it was always walking around like, well, who am I? Like, how do I fit in? And how do I find a sense of belonging? So it was just strange, but it's also a gift. It's also a real, real gift now when I look back. So my perspective is different, but it just, it's interesting.
Was it Jehovah's Witness?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I totally understand where you come from. I've been blessed to talk to many individuals that kind of sort of gone through the same situation. Have you went through growing up, and all of your stories is not that different. So I apologize if nobody has ever apologized to you. I do it here. I'm sorry you had to go through that, but you're here now, which is the most important part.
Yeah. And I think just like if we look at life, I wonder your perspective. Like when we are given those what may be looked at as challenges or disadvantages or what have you. Mm-hmm. But I think that is where the real, like, that's the gold, that's the grit, because you have to develop a sense of self outside of being able to just go along with everybody else, or feeling like, oh, I can just kind of flow with, everybody else is cool and fits in. I kind of fit in. So even if you were a geek in school or the weird one or, whatever, I think those are gifts. But I appreciate your apologies. I mean, but I think that it's I wouldn't change it now because well, I mean, it's who I am today, and it's
Yeah,
just given me a very different perspective on life.
I'm into that. Yeah, it made you stronger. What
Yeah,
was that?
stronger.
Yeah,
Hmm.
what was that moment like, and where like you realized what it was, and you started slowly uh disattaching yourself from that? Was it something you already grown, you grew up, you're in teens, or you're an
Hmm.
adult? How was that like?
I think there was so much pressure put on me, but a lot of youth, to be perfect, to achieve
Mm,
this success. It could be in sports, it could be in education, it could be anything, right? I think there's a lot of this like pressure to succeed or to be really good. And that same thing happened as a Jehovah's Witness. So it was like, to be a great Jehovah's Witness, you need to become a missionary and travel, go to areas what they call as the need is great. So to answer your question, that all of that pressure just kept building and building and building for me, where it was like what I actually really desired to do was every time I would talk like this is what I want to do, my parents were like, you can't do that, that goes against all the beliefs, it's going to take you away from, they call it the truth. So all Jehovah's Witnesses, they refer to it as the truth. And so like those dreams just kept like shrinking, where I was like, oh man, but this is like what I want. And so as I became an adult, through my teenage life, um I wanted to go to school, I wanted to go to post second, to go to university. And secondary education was absolutely, you do not do that, because you don't want people expanding their minds, right? And like you want to keep them in the organization. So they are very against secondary education. And I wanted to travel Europe. Like that's was what I really wanted to
you
do,
wanted to live a life.
live a life. And so with all of that, the underlying story too was that I knew that I was different as well, because I, when most all of us start to realize that we like puberty hits and sexual
Mm-hmm.
energy hits, and you start to realize like what you're attracted to or what have you, I knew something was, up, man. Because I was like, well, I don't like, this is, it's just hard to explain. It's like it just is what it is. I was not interested in girls, it just was not a thing. um but I didn't have the words around what it meant at that time. There
Yeah,
was nobody really in.
you were still developed, trying to understand these feelings.
Yeah,
Who you were still trying to find who you were,
right, yeah,
and
who
being in
you
it,
are.
and being in that organization. And this is me speaking out of experience with these individuals. They all say the same thing. And it's, yet again, I apologize because it's difficult to be in an environment like that, man.
Yeah. So that pressure
Yeah.
just kept building to be this great Jehovah's Witness, and the pressure of me wanting to be authentic. And that really kind of burst when I was about 25, 26. I mean, I started kind of, I would say, fading,
Hmm.
because I got a job where I had a boss who really saw something in me and started to like, be like, hey, you could really, move up and you could make more money, um,
Push you forward.
and push me forward. And that felt really good because I had not had that really in my life. And then I started hanging out with people from work, which I had never done before. I didn't hang out with people who were not Jehovah's Witnesses. And I was like, these people are cool. And like I hadn't even drank, at all, really. Like just drinking was not a big thing. And like I remember one of the first time I went out with a bunch of coworkers, and I got drunk, and I had never been drunk before, and I just had a blast, and they were super cool. And I'm like, these people aren't bad. Like, and I really like them, and they actually like me for me, and I don't have to talk about any of that Jehovah's Witness crap. Um, and so and they all knew I was gay. I hadn't said anything, and I wasn't really acting on it. But one time when they were like, what's it like being gay? And I'm like, how'd you know? They're like, we knew, like we thought you knew. I'm like, And so like those were some of the first people I came out to, and it was like no big deal. So there was like this sense of relief of like, oh, like there's people who will like me for just who I am. I can just be me, and I don't have to put on a show
Mm.
or, put on
Be
like
fake and the Scott.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was really cool. And that was really instrumental in me, I think, moving away the from the Jehovah's Witnesses. And then it all just kind of compounded and kind of blew up. And I think the universe delivers things just at the right time. And um, I got outed to my family, got cut off from community.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people are like, oh, I feel so bad for you. And I'm like, man, I knew it was going to happen, and it wasn't the way I wanted it to happen, but I knew it was going to happen when it did, and I'm really grateful that it happened when it did, because it was a sense of relief, and I could just kind of be like, okay, well, it's out. I can't. There's nothing else I can do. The bomb has gone off. Everybody's cut. They're going through their own things, family, all that stuff. But that was a real relief, as opposed to like, I mean, there was sadness and trying to refine community, um, and find my way. But we're resilient as humans.
Yeah.
We're really capable if we believe in ourselves.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sometimes it's those like really dark times where, I think unfortunately some people, maybe it's harder to come out of that. But I think for the most part, I think humans are really way more capable than we have ever been told, to be able to pull ourselves up and to find ourselves and forge forth.
No, man, it's inspiring. It's either those dark times either make you or break you. We all
Mm-hmm.
go through it, whether it's your situation or a different situation, especially with family. But at the end of the day, we have to do what makes us happy.
Yeah.
We have to find our way and live our truth in a way, because at the end
Mm-hmm.
of the day, you know, our parents, they give us life, but yet at some point we have to now take an accountability, being responsible for our own life and how we
Mm-hmm.
choose to live it. We have to live it in a way that we're satisfied and happy and living content, because
Mm-hmm.
nobody's gonna give you happiness but yourself. You got to be happy for who you are and living in. And I could just imagine living, those dark times, not being your true self.
Mm-hmm.
It's the most, like, it drives you crazy.
Yeah. It's exhausting because I
Yeah.
think that all of us at some point, whether we're trying to live up to our parents' image of what they wanted of us, society's image, or maybe our kids, we think we
Mm-hmm.
need to be a certain way even for our kids or coworkers. It's exhausting. But I
Mm-hmm.
think so many people feel like, well, that's what I got to do to be accepted. And when you do go through those times and you start to realize like that deeper connection to yourself and that really your own worthiness comes from you as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to anybody else. And yeah, it may piss off family, or it may upset society, or people may not like it, or
Yeah.
or whatever it is. Everybody's going
Yeah.
to have an opinion.
You're
But
listen. You're always gonna be somebody's villain in their story.
yeah.
Doesn't matter who it is.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter how you could try it good or bad. You're always gonna be a villain. The important part is they mention your name right
Mm-hmm.
and they respect you,
Mm-hmm.
and everything else doesn't matter.
Yeah. What are your thoughts about? I was talking on the phone with somebody about this diversity. So a lot of the work I'll do is like with corporations around like leadership and intuitive stuff.
Yes.
But
Yes.
we were talking about intentionality.
Hmm.
What are your thoughts on like intentionality? Because yeah, I'm interested. Like, how do you live an intentional life?
I mean, like living a purposeful life.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a very good question. First of all, you have to find what is your purpose.
Hmm.
What is your why, right? Like in business, they always ask you, what is your why? And it can't be your family, it can't be your children. It's why are you doing this, right? So
Hmm.
first you will have to find that
Hmm.
in order, and then everything else will come, together.
Hmm.
Uh, I think living a life full of purpose is it goes right in there with happiness,
Mm-hmm.
because what you're doing essentially is making you happy.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, if it's for as long as it's something positive, right? Because
Right.
you have those other individuals who have purpose and everything is negative,
Mm-hmm.
and they become obsessed and uncontrollable. So
Mm-hmm.
there's you always have to have those two, acknowledge those two different analogy of type of people, right?
Right.
So you got to live a life that gives you a reason to wake up in the morning, like a
Mm-hmm.
9 to 5. Like you're in this corporation and working with these corporations to try to inspire these people to become leaders for either for the company, but more alone for themselves. They got to
Right.
stay motivated to wake up and give 110% each and every day. But if you don't know why you're getting up, and that 9 to 5 is just miserable, there's no why there. You're
Mm-hmm.
just doing it based off responsibilities,
Right.
because rent is due, mortgage due, car maintenance due, light, water, electrical. Like those are things that I feel like in society we have lost a lot. Or you're just waking up to buy, you know, I don't know, things that are not worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Just momentarily gratification.
Yeah.
So like for me, for instance, like me, I didn't, didn't grow up in a cult, but I grew up with a difficult upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
My mentality each and every day is like, is going after it. Is always trying to
Mm-hmm.
prove myself that I could be better than yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
That the version that today's version, it's not as the amount of tomorrow's version.
Right.
I like to push myself.
Yeah.
I like to try new things. I like to go out there. I like to experiment. I like to learn. I like to live a capacity in life and where I'm consuming life and meeting
Mm-hmm.
people. And some days I have my great days. Some days, I am the most unpatient individual. I have my way of being. I'm not an easy individual. Like knowing that's the thing also, getting to know who you are, right? I
Mm-hmm.
know who I am. I
Yeah.
know who I am for years since I was a child. So I know that if, let's say, I stay here and I have overwhelmed with people, I'm gonna start getting agitated. So I need to take a step back. I know my limits. I know how much I could go. I know how much I can't. Right. So just getting after it. Just getting
Mm-hmm.
after it. Proving to myself that I can. My goal is not to live a perfect life, but to live a good life. And
Mm-hmm.
where when it's time to clock out, man, like that last tears, because in a split of a second, I relived everything I lived, and I can say, man, fuck, that's a good life.
That was a damn good life.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah. I love it. I really, a couple of things you said that I thought was really great that sat with me was when you talked about like your why even in business, but it's not your why, it's not your kids, not your payment, like it's not any of these external things that, well, I want to provide. Yes, you want all those things to provide, but I love that you're connecting it the intentional piece to like your why,
mm,
because that was the thing in like figuring myself out and getting to know myself was that same, like how cool is it when you finally know your boundaries, or you're in a group of people and it's like too many people are coming in, or you're just like I'm out. And I remember, I don't know, this was a long time ago, but Oprah one time even said, she's like, no is a complete sentence. And
yes,
um
yes,
yeah, and I listened to that and I was like, I'm gonna try that, because somebody would, a lot of times like people would call me and be like, hey, you want to do this or business or ideas, and I'm like, no, and give excuses. And the first time I tried it, I was like, no, and I didn't explain anything else, and they were just like silent and you could tell, but then they didn't ask anything else, and they're okay, they moved on. I was like, that started to teach me too, that like knowing my own boundaries,
Yeah.
leading it,
Self-worth.
of self-worth, my own why. um and your last comment to me is key. Like I've thought so much now about my life of like when I go out and I leave this body, like I wanted to be like, hell yes. I mean, I did.
Yeah. Yeah.
I went to the wall. I tried. Maybe there were things I left on the table or didn't, but I want to live intentionally.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that's cool that you're doing that too, man.
Man, it's you know what it is? It's you gotta you don't, you we have to be honest with ourselves and where we don't know everything.
Mm-hmm.
But it's through trial and error that we start learning who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And like you have to set a set of values for you as a person. Like that, and where you have to live through these values, right? Like example, like my house. I don't like nobody coming to my house. Nobody
Yeah.
comes in. If it's not my family, and if that, because my door is not a rewarding door, because essentially your house is your foundation, is your, since we're talking religion, right? It's your temple, it's your church.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
where you keep your sanity, where you lay your head, where you wake up, where you live majority of your life, right? So nobody can come in or out to try to unbalance that.
Mm-hmm.
You have to know you can't like you can't there are things, right? There's like pure pressure, right? People want you to do this, and you're like, no. They want you to no. Like you gotta stick to your guns and say no. You
Mm-hmm.
can't let people change who you are as a person or the values you have as a person because they're gonna start questioning your character.
Mm-hmm.
It's like like famous people say, "Oh, what if a Snoop Dogg says you want to smoke weed and you got it because Snoop Dogg's like no." You
Yeah.
can't let other people influence who you are or stop
Mm-hmm.
being who you are because this person is no, is who you are, and you gotta stick to your guns. And that's gonna help you create clarity and
Yes.
focus. And man, do the things that you do want to do. And you're gonna make mistakes, but mistakes are good. I don't know about you, but like me and upbringing, hearing that negative talk and where failure is bad, and you stick stuck there, and failure is like, no, no, failure is good because how would you learn? I
Right.
think I think we live the life there. We try to live a life full of trying to be perfect,
Mm.
and I don't think we should live a life like that.
No, it's not at all, because when you start to realize that the even that word just sucks,
Mm-hmm.
because it's like failing. When I started my first podcast, man, I went into it. I was super excited. All these ideas that came up. And I was telling friends concept and talking to other people. They're like, it's going to be big. And I'm like, of course you want it to be big. You're wanting it to have impact. You're wanting it to, whatever your intention is. And I thought it was going to do really great. And it did pretty good. But here's what I'll say. I learned so much. Now, if I measured my success off of downloads, subscribers, making money on it, it was a failure.
Yeah, correct.
But the experience of it was, you could fuck off, because
Yeah,
like
it's
I
worth more.
it is worth more than anything else. And I think about everything that I've gone through my life. That's why, like, now when a lot of people, well, they'll hear my story, they understand, or even like being gay in this country, or being gay
Mm.
just in general, but being gay. I start
And
my
that's
first.
okay. And that's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah,
That's okay.
and it's okay if it's not okay for you. I just don't care. Like I don't care. Like,
Good. Good.
great. Like you go do you. And my biggest thing with anybody is like, hey, you cannot like anything I do or other people do, but I'm gonna call you on bullshit if you don't know yourself. So
Yes.
just go know yourself. And if you really know yourself and you know what's going on with you, and you're clear and you're focused and you are purposeful,
Mm-hmm. Here's the
celebrate it.
here's the thing with that. All right. So like this is how you call these individuals that like because the problem is not who you are. The problem is that because you do not know who you are, you push yourself on people.
Right.
And if it's one thing you want to live a good life, live it in an imaginary square or circle, whatever, and where your boundaries.
Hmm.
I think the problem that we have in society today is that people do not know who they are, and they keep pushing. They keep
Hmm.
pushing and pushing. And like, I don't know about you, but like, I know who I am. I don't push myself on nobody.
Hmm.
I stay exactly where I am and I live my life,
Hmm.
you
Yeah.
know, and that's that's the issue I have when it comes to, things in general.
Yes. Me too. And I think the thing is, I can't assert myself on anybody else,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm also not going to diminish myself for your comfort.
Yes, yes, yes. Don't stop being who you are.
Not going to. And when you come into that place of like I love how you talk about like your house is like your sanctuary.
Yeah,
You don't let like I think we get to choose the things that are important to us. I grew up in a house like we had people over all the time, and I do love that. But so I love when I do have people over, but I also
mm-hmm.
really love my alone time. And like all my
Yeah.
really good friends know that like I love a long road drive. Like sometimes I'll just, I live in Colorado and I'll just drive into the mountains and they'll be like, how long were you on the road, today? I'm like, I drove 8 hours. And they're like, what? But my friends know me and they know that that's that's my place. That's my I get my best ideas. I build relationship
Clarity,
with
peaceful.
yeah, it's clarity, it's peaceful. And so like that's it. That's the only thing I think I hear you saying this too is that's what I encourage anybody is like just go find yourself and find that clarity and peace because life is going to be so much better.
Is that what?
Whatever you
No,
choose.
one the main problem is a lot of people don't know how to be alone,
Mm-hmm.
and then they build relationships, and where they gotta spend the rest of their lives with people, or have children, and it gets bigger and bigger, and they never develop that sense of aloneness, and where, all right, I need a deep breath, or I need a walk to think about something. They need
Mm-hmm.
that time. And a lot of people are afraid of being alone with their thoughts,
Yes.
are afraid to call themselves out,
Mm-hmm.
afraid to look inside rather than outside.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the problems we have today, in my opinion, right? Because I'm not a doctor. I can only speak of what I experienced and what I've seen, right? And I need my alone time.
Oh yeah.
I need my, I need I need to decompress my thoughts, because the mind is the most powerful and beautiful, amazing thing you have as a human being, as a person.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't take care of that, then everything else goes to hell.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know?
I agree. I did a 40-day solo camping trip. I mean, I've done a lot of solo travel, but during COVID, I put all my stuff in storage and just went out in nature and I did 40 days totally just solo. And it was really crazy deal. Like all these people, tons of my friends, old colleagues, just people on social media, because I would post pictures and videos and
Mm-hmm.
was talking about what I was doing at certain points and people are like I couldn't even do one night. I hate being by myself. And I talk to people and like do you take yourself to dinner? Do you go to a movie? What, like, have you done anything really just for yourself? Some people are like, oh, gym or yoga, but they're usually around other people.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they get that quiet, but there's something really special when you invest in that relationship with yourself and give yourself that space.
Yeah.
What's your favorite way to spend alone time? Do you have like things you really like when you're to do alone?
Um, I like to take walks.
Mm-hmm.
I recently started jogging again. So in that moment, it's quiet. Like I
Mm-hmm.
got to a point that I didn't even listen to music anymore. Just my thoughts, just my breathing, just I doing that. I often just go to my office and sit in my chair and just, for me, it's like, if my mind's not okay, I can't move forward. If my body is all sore from working or whatever, for as long as my mind's okay, I could go anywhere, even though
Mm-hmm.
I'm being sore. So I'll sit down. I don't know, man. I find myself just being disattached sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
If the kids are downstairs and my wife and they're chatting, I'll go up to my office for 5-10 minutes, maybe 15. Take a couple of deep breaths. I don't know, your soccer or whatever they call it, energy, and then I'll just
Yeah.
go. I'll return.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go back, back downstairs. But those are essentially the thing I tend to do.
Mm-hmm.
Before, I just go to jujitsu. That
No,
was
it's
the
cool.
that was the best thing. Oh man, that was my temple.
Yeah, you love that.
Yeah, man, it was amazing. It was
That
amazing.
that's cool. Yeah, it's I think taking those moments of breath or whatever, or like I have a thing, like if I get my head like on that camping trip, like the
Hmm.
second night in, because like I put everything in storage. I didn't have a place to live when I was out,
Hmm.
I wasn't sure if I was coming back to Colorado. I kind of got my head around the campfire,
Yeah,
and all of a sudden
that's super dope, man.
it was a ton of fun, but I was like, shit, like how it starts to spiral,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then this like really prominent voice came through. It was like, get out of your head into your feet, just get out of your head and in your feet. And I started walking out of the campground, and I was walking, and this is in the middle of nowhere wilderness kind of. And I come around this corner, and there's like this bridge, like the little bridge, nobody's around. There's this stream, and I'm just sitting down, and it's like that beautiful time of day when the sun's setting,
Yeah.
everything's like just that like golden hour. And I'm sitting there, and this female deer was right across the river with her little baby. And they just looked at me, and I sat there, and it was a total peace. And that statement has stayed with me so long when I'm like, get out of your head, get in your feet. And, I
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
move. And that's the way for me to like move that energy. But that's the beauty of figuring yourself out and
Yeah.
how you can, and some of the coolest shit happens when you listen to when you quiet the real chatter, and then you come into that
Yeah.
clear space. Like, I don't know, like really cool experiences have happened, and that moment felt like, I still remember it, like that was specifically just for me. Like that
Yeah.
was,
Yeah.
I didn't hear another human. I was out in the middle of nowhere. It was glorious.
And sometimes, we get like that is because we have so much we want to say, so many thoughts, and sometimes, you know, listening to somebody or having somebody listening to us is not enough because it's not like we're not getting it out there.
Mhm.
So, when you're in your alone time, shit, I must sound crazy just talking to myself because sometimes I feel like I just need to say it so I can
Yeah.
hear it.
Yes.
And if when I hear it, like, that's not for me. So keep moving, digest,
Mhm.
keep moving forward.
Right.
I fucking being alone is when I realized like I was at a point in my time and where I just all right, it's time to find somebody to settle
Mhm.
down with. Like
Mhm.
before I got married, I was a big person. I used to go to the movies by myself, dinner by myself. Like I didn't care. People would judge me, would look at
Mhm.
me and like, why would you do that? Like, why then? Like it made me happy. Like I'm not gonna
Mhm.
stop living the life because somebody is not with me.
Right.
So, after a while, I would go to movies and look to the side and it was just like, you know, time, because time will tell you what you need if you give it time. And it's like, all right, it's time to settle down.
Mhm.
And eventually, I met my wife and, hit it from there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. How cool. Well, and because you have that relationship
Mm-hmm.
with yourself, I'm sure that she, like your wife, respects that, because I'm sure she wants her own time, and then you have those like boundaries of understanding, like you're a better partner, you're a better parent.
No, no,
No, no,
no,
total
no,
opposite.
no. And that's every marriage, man. That's
Right. Yeah.
when you get married, you're together for quite some time, and have kids, and that goes out the door, man. That's like a vacation. God forbid
Yep.
you get one right now.
So your advice is stay single, no kids.
No, not even get kids. Be as as difficult as I am sometimes. Go live a life, worth living. Because if you ain't got no challenge, life is just dull.
Oh
sometimes.
yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
talk to me about this book.
Yeah.
I'm really intrigued. I had the name here. Give me one sec. Okay, so you wrote this book, the breakdown to wake up, journey
Hmm.
beyond the now. Like,
Yeah.
talk to me about your book. What inspired you? How did you start it? What's it about? Like, talk to me.
Yeah. The universe is incredible. So I was on that camping trip and I had started journaling. That was one of my intentions, was like to journal, get the crap out of my head.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like writing and I was doing all that kind of stuff. And it was good. Sometimes I journal whenever, throughout that time. Um, so why I share that is I had hated writing for a long time. And I thought that was not my thing.
Yeah.
And as I started journaling, I really, really like enjoyed it. It was really therapeutic. And I had never been really allowed to develop my creative side because
Mm-hmm.
just there's a whole reason why all of that, like, that just was not the focus of as a kid that I was allowed to do. So I started to realize this creative side. And I said out loud one time on one of my hikes, I was like, man, it'd be really cool to write a book, write something. I feel like I've got a story and maybe a novel. And I started playing around with that. And I didn't have service and I had to go into town to get service. And this guy that I had been like business networking with, he was like, hey, he sent me this text comes through and he's like, I think you're out camping or something, but I want to talk to you because I told this woman about your story and she helps authors write books. She's a publisher. And he's like, she wants to hear about your story. Can I connect her? So we did. When I wrapped up that camping trip, got on the phone and I told her a little bit about my story. And she's like, I've been journaling, but I've never written anything.
Yeah.
And she was like, well, I think you should. And so I just said yes. It just kind of came out of my mouth. I was like, yeah, I'll write. And then I was like, what the fuck? Like, what am I going to do? But the concept that I took with it was that I never got to really have a conversation with my mother or father
Mm.
and talk through things after all of that happened. When I got cut off, like the relationship just we'd never had like a real adult relationship anyways, but where you really talked about stuff or could share. Um, but I never got to really say anything. And my dad had passed about at that point, maybe like 6 years before when I went to write. So, and there was a lot of unsaid things. And I just didn't know, I wasn't able to communicate. And so I wrote it all from the perspective of a letter to my mother.
Wow.
And that's how I wrote it. And I sat down at the computer and I just started writing. And I had no idea how to edit or put a story together. And I had looked at a couple of YouTube things and listened to I love podcasts. I just love to learn, I love to
Mm-hmm.
learn, grow, try. And I heard one that said like, um, just write, don't don't like, just write, don't look at anything, just write everything. And then like go back the next day and look at it, but don't try to write a paragraph and edit and then write like
That's right.
that'll screw you up. And just sit down and write. And I did. And it was really fun. And what the book is, it's a compilation of 10 other people too, talking about their stories of going through hardship, alcoholism, different things. But from that, what has sparked is, I think, I believe, and somewhat know that at least I know this much at this point, and I know I'm going to learn more. But when things come into our life, and if we get our curiosity is sparked, and we're like, man, that sounds really cool.
Mm-hmm.
I want to do that, but it seems kind of crazy or it's a little different. Do your best to do it without much expectation. And on that one, I didn't have any expectation because I'd never really thought much about it. And over time, though, what has happened is like I've been writing poetry. I haven't published anything yet, but like poetry started to flow from out, and I've never read poetry. I read a lot of other things, but no poetry. But a novel, there's a novel that I want to write, and I've been starting to work on like the outline of it, how I tell a story that's somewhat, which really unique, bring in things of aspects of being raised a Jehovah's Witness, but also being raised in New Mexico, where there's a lot of like deep mysticism. And
Mm,
I grew up in the very like around, I mean, I everybody I grew up around was Latin and Hispanic. Well, they call it, they say they will tell you they're New Mexican. And so like New Mexicans. And so
yeah.
like that's what I grew up with, and I love that culture there. So it's been exploring that, and I've written other little things. But I think the novel is probably going to be the next real deep work that I do. Um, where I can tell a story, and but I can give myself some relief where I don't have to have it all directly about me, but I could
Mm,
weave things in about me and other stories of other Jehovah's Witnesses I know, but I won't use their names. But I can weave this in to tell a story that maybe enlightens and helps other people find. And at the end of the day, it's really just me being creative. So
mm.
that's what that book was. I think there's more writing to come. Um, and I just haven't put the pressure there, but it just all kind of fell together, and it was super fun. Um, and that's what I've realized now, like in life is, first podcast is, I'm going to retire that one. I have a second one I'm working on. I had, or a new one that I'm doing. It's all around like leadership stuff. And then I have another one that I'm going to do where I'm co-hosting with another guy. And we're going to talk about the elephant in the room, the big topics that are kind of like the elephant in the room. And it could be funny stuff too. It's all creative expression. And I
Mhm.
think we're here to create. I know we're here to create.
Yeah,
And when we can tap into that side of us, uh, that's where we find that sense of purpose or intentionality or happiness.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Were you able to grieve the loss of your father? I mean, because I could just imagine, I only speak, like I said, I only speak of my experience, like I very difficult upbringing. I didn't grow up with a dad. I grew up with my grandparents. My mom was here and there. Now, for the grace of God, we have a way better relationship, right? But I've always I always felt anger and disappointment.
Mm-hmm.
It's like as a kid, you always ask why.
Mm-hmm.
As you get older, why? And I was never that kid who asked why. Like I have this high belief that nobody owes you anything but your parents because they brought you in, to this life. And being a parent now, just you know, as time progressed, I just I learned that like for me, I have to forgive them
Mm-hmm.
for me, and people or who they are.
Mm-hmm.
Just like I want to be accepted, I gotta accept them who they are and show that respect. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, I don't have to take shit. I'm
Right.
not
Yeah.
obligated, right? But like
Yes.
that was one of the big breaking points for me. And when like I had to, I can't have that anger lingering
Mm-hmm.
because I'm now a parent.
Right.
Because sometimes I was like, I'm doing stuff with my son, and I'm like, sometimes I get those flashbacks. And like, I get out of nowhere, I get irritated, like, but why couldn't they do that for what I'm doing? Why can't I do this for me?
Mm-hmm.
And in certain point, I just like I had to come to, once again call myself out, be held accountable and be like, man, I gotta let this go.
Yes.
I gotta, I gotta forgive. And I can't do it for them, I gotta do it for me. And man, I'll tell you this much. There was months and we're like I felt like empty space. I was just going through the process, just grieving until, I was able to get better and better and better and, you know, way happier than I was once before.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man, because like holding on to that anger, resentment, I totally that resonates with me. I think, oh, man, my dad, he married my mom, so we're a blended family.
Mm.
So he was married before and had two sons. My mom was married before and had two sons and a daughter. And my dad and mom got married, and I'm their oldest, and then they have two more kids. So there's eight of us.
Yeah.
And my dad took on the financial responsibility in raising my mom's children. um there's some interesting story anyways, but I never felt close to him. My parents never really talked in depth, or never saw them fight or anything, but I never really had a close relation. He was just very authoritarian.
Mm.
This is what you do. Jehovah's Witnesses are authoritarian. You listen to your
Strict.
father.
Yeah.
Yeah, super strict. And as a teenager, I was always really, really independent and very different anyways from all my siblings, even from the time I was really young. When he, when I got cut off, when we cut that off, I kind of expected, and I was like, yeah, fuck you, like whatever, I don't care. And
Fight the power.
yeah, and I shoved that shit down for a long time. And when I found out he was sick, I found out on a Halloween. It was Halloween that they had called. And this was like 12, 13 years later. So I hadn't talked to him at all. And I got a call from my older brother. He was like, hey, dad's in the hospital. You need to talk to him, or, give him a call. He's like, I don't think it's good. So talked to my dad briefly. He was kind of in,
Coming in and out.
he's in the hospital and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. And when they found out he had this type of cancer that was pretty aggressive, and he decided he wasn't going to do any treatments. He was like, I don't want to do that. So it was going to progress really quickly. And so a month later, it was my first time flying back home to see him. And there's, all the families there. There's a bunch of Jehovah's Witnesses. Everybody's around. He's at hospice. He's in a hospice in the
Yeah.
house. And I only really got a half hour with him. And I asked him a lot of questions about him and my grandparents, because he had never really talked about his childhood. He was the captain of a football team. I just kind of wanted to know him. And so I got a little bit of out of him. He was, he shared stuff, and he was, in a good mood. And I had a big trip planned to New Zealand right after. I was literally leaving from there to New Zealand for 5 weeks. And I told him, I'm like, I can cancel my trip, because they knew that he was
Mm-hmm.
not expected to make it maybe past Christmas. And he's like, he looked at me and he's like, I he's like, go travel, go live your life, be happy. I love you. And I was like, shit.
That's all you
Um,
needed to hear.
Well, in ways, right? I was like,
Yeah.
kind of like, fuck you. Okay. Like, you're dying and you can say this. I still had anger,
Mm-hmm.
and he passed. But what I was going to say is it really didn't hit me till about 4 years later, man, when I hit 40.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized like I had no relationship. I didn't understand like that, the father son thing, like I just was like, I was angry. I was more and more angry, and I'd never been an angry person. And now I couldn't talk to him, and I couldn't ask him, and I needed advice because I was going through stuff, and I'm like, I don't have my parents. I don't have, like, who do I go to for advice? And I was really angry. And on that trip, that 40-day trip, got a lot of shit out. um I started to, and I had been on a journey of like really understanding myself and healing, like the religious shit and spiritually too. And here's what I'll say. My perspective, I have a far better relationship with my dad now that he's dead than when he was alive. And I mean, totally. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
and I look back at all the stuff he was teaching me. He was teaching me. He just taught it in his own way at that time, in his own mind, from his own programming, from the way his dad taught. Societally, but he was he taught me so many great pieces of wisdom. And I'll sit at moments and I'll be like,
Damn.
that was what he was saying.
Yeah.
That's what he was telling me then. And I think that that's that wisdom that we've lost in our, where we can, especially it seems in many, in our culture. And when I say our culture, I just mean the greater American culture, or maybe westernized, where we tend to toss our elderly aside. And I'm not sure that we have always a lot of really wise elders, because if they don't really know themselves, I think wisdom can come in. It doesn't matter the age. But that's when I finally healed, when I started to look at his stuff and just realize, like, I'll never understand how he was looking at life, the pressure to raise,
Yeah.
a family, to be an entrepreneur, to be a Jehovah's Witness, to
It's it, and it's and I don't speak because I'm a father.
yeah.
It's fucking highly scary.
Mm-hmm.
And it's scary, and the most scary thing is like having a child grow up, like you did, and him not, because you're stuck in this situation where like it's stressful, the pressure's on, baby gotta eat, the mortgage or the rent is due, the car
Mm-hmm.
payments, we might not have light,
Mm-hmm.
we might not have water. You
Mm-hmm.
get what I'm saying? Like,
Yes.
we're about to get evicted. That pressure, you trying to explain that to little kid, he's not gonna get it.
Mm-mm.
It's not, and it's not, and it's a lot of missing detail in a lot of individuals because of that.
Mm-hmm.
I try my best to be like what's his name? Mufasa,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where Mufasa, he'll come at Simba, but then he'll put him to the side and let's talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Because like as a kid, we used to don't do this, but nobody talked to us.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody took out the time to tell why.
Mm-hmm.
And as a parent, there's people that make the time. So there's people that don't have time, and there's people that just don't make the time.
Mm-hmm.
And at least for me, like, jobs will come and go. And until I'm trying to flourish my business, it will come and go, but I would do my best to be alongside my son and
Mm-hmm.
do the best, because I never had it that.
Right.
I saw that my lessons was the streets, and I saw how parents, I took the good things about certain parents and installed in me. The bad things I
Mm-hmm.
left them out. This is good, left them here, and do my best with that. But man, it's hard and it's scary.
Mm-hmm.
And the way the world's been going lately, and we're like you said, there's no really old wise person, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's because they're like us, where you're
Mm-hmm.
not gonna find them. They're loners.
Mm-hmm.
The person that you would think will be the most not wise is the wisest one. They're
Mm-hmm.
alone. You gotta look for them.
Mm-hmm.
You got to initiative and talk to them. And once you do, they'll get comfortable and trustworthy. Like, you gotta look at yourself like us, like me.
Yep.
Like if I speak to you, is because I gotta tell you two things: stop what the fuck you're doing and listen, right?
Right.
Or have a conversation.
Yeah.
But either than that, like, I'm not looking to spread any knowledge. I'm not looking to have a conversation. Like, it's in comfort, when you're most comfortable, which is like for me in my lone in my solitude of quietness. Like, I'm in my zone. I don't need to talk to anybody. You get what
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, I'm the same, and I think that what was interesting after that was that a lot of these other mentors and friends and people, like I just got to see one of my mentors, and she's a friend, but also like a real mentor. She's almost 80 now. She's an
Wow, God
entrepreneur,
bless.
built a multi-million-dollar business. She's traveled the world. She's done a lot of firsts. Like, she was the first woman to bike across Canada
Wow,
in
amazing.
1977. She's done just really cool stuff. And sitting at lunch yesterday with her, and she's just like, I'm like, so what's next for you? And she's like, well, she's like, I sat down, I was kind of thinking about what I want to accomplish in the next 20 years. She's 80. And and so she said, and I'm still learning more about myself. And so I think that that's the piece that I really value, even about what you said. It's like, it is the quiet ones. It's the people who are off doing their life and they're making things happen. But I think that they want to mentor and they want to share their knowledge, but they realize too that you got to ask those questions and just kind of be around and as they start to share. So yeah, that's kind of the story with my dad now, is like I feel like all the time he's here. And I am beyond appreciative and grateful for the things that he taught me and the best that he could do. And just living my life as intentionally as I can, that I think when I get out of this body, like you said earlier, I'm going to feel really good about the life I lived, and boom, that's that.
There you go. And with that being said, Paul, thanks for joining me, man. I had an awesome time with you. Amazing conversation.
Same here.
God bless you, man. Keep striving. Keep living a life that makes you happy, and that's the most important thing.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Before we go, please tell the people where they can find you.
I'm on Instagram at The Curious Queer. So on Instagram, my website is paulhoneycutt.com. So you can go to that. And then my a show that's on YouTube is this little show called UGG. And we talk about leadership and just kind of break down what we think it is. And it's fun and it's just being creative. So if you want to give that a listen, check it out. But thank you so much for having me on. This was fantastic.
It was an honor having you. Boom. Go check him out. Go support him. Go follow him. Go check out his book. It's amazing. Go check out his podcast. And make sure to follow me on Instagram, Mr.DreamsByObtain. Go like and subscribe our YouTube channel, DIOTALK TV. I'm out, guys. Have a good night.